Today, I'm focused on getting the 2-liter Ecoboost motor into the Fox body. We're gonna check clearances of some things, kind of see how close everything fits. My biggest concern being steering shaft to where the oil filter sits on the Ecoboost. I hopefully don't have to do a relocation kit. If I do, I'll end up doing an oil cooler in it, but they're not cheap, so I'd rather not do that. But yeah, we're gonna mock everything up, put the motor mounts fully on, see how everything fits in the engine bay, and maybe bolt it down, and then I can start focusing on intercooler piping, mounting everything, mounting the radiator, getting radiator hoses, all that stuff, while I still wait for the ZF adapter from GemSport. So let's get into it, get this motor in the car. As you can tell from the background, we got the garage door open. Don't let that fool you. It's still February, but we have a beautiful 50-degree day, and having the garage door open, if you're from the Midwest, you know, that just cures a little bit of that seasonal depression. So it's a little windy, might be a little noisy, but we're keeping that door open. It's a good day. All right, so first fun one is this side motor mount. I gotta put the bolt in before I tighten it, because obviously once the bolt is in, it's like a hair in between the bolt and the oil drain. I don't really know how long I'm gonna keep the oil drain like this. I don't like that it doesn't keep a solid angle. It still has a downward angle, it's just hard to tell. But I'm probably gonna, with 10AN line, it's really hard to manipulate. So I hope you can hear this, it's really windy. I'll just talk a little closer to it. I don't know. We're gonna keep it how it is for now, but I'm probably gonna end up changing that because I don't want to run the risk of that getting damaged at all or interfering with anything. But it does, the bolt does fit, the bolt does turn. It should be okay. We're just, again, just for mock-up. I don't know. I'll try and find like a 45 and then maybe like a 30-degree angle to just keep it something, but I don't know. I gotta look into that. Okay, had to take the high pressure fuel line, or hose, whatever you want to call it, off because it was hitting the firewall. So I'm not using it, we're gonna leave it off for now. It wasn't clearing well. I don't know if my intake is gonna clear my booster, so that'll be interesting, but all right, now that hose is off the back, let's try and get it back in there. Okay, to say the least, didn't just drop right in like I kind of half expected it to. Kind of weird, you can drop a fucking V8 in here way easier than this thing is gone. So, obviously, yes, I'm realizing turbo's gonna have to get clocked, which I kind of expected. But, I mean, supposedly, this is for a fucking Fox body K-member. But, I mean, that's a huge angle difference. This side is close, but also different. I am, unfortunately, I took the oil filter off just for clearance purposes right now, but I am unfortunately probably gonna have to run the relocation kit, which kind of sucks, but it's whatever. And intake is clearing, or not clearing, just barely rubbing my brake booster. So, as well as, she's kind of into the firewall. This is where I had to cut that hard line off, and I trimmed that just a little bit because that's not the end of the world. But yeah, she's sitting kind of wonky in here, and I really don't want to adjust and mock stuff up until I can get the ZF mounted on there and see kind of where things are sitting. So, other thing, grabbed a Sharpie to mark. Let's see if I can find a way to show you. Not even all the way in yet, and oil pan is rubbing the K-member. So I'm gonna have to do some trimming of that as well. So yeah, not exactly a drop-in thing. I don't know how one of these would sit in a stock K-member on these cars, to be honest. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm gonna fuck with it a little bit and then pick the camera back up once I can actually get this thing sitted in here properly and show you what I would have had to change. So until then. All right, well, I'm glad this car at least has a stock K-member. It fits nicely. I mean, mine is still that on this one, but I mean, stock brake booster, it clears that. The only downfall is, the only reason it doesn't clear that in mine, I'm realizing, is the 1-inch spacer for the port injection. So, I don't know. It would be in and clear a little bit better without that, but I might just sand some of this down without going into the intake. But otherwise, yeah. She fits halfway decently in here. Clock the turbo a little bit differently, so I'll probably just leave it at that. That'll make it a little easier. But yeah, so that means that our modified K-member for a 302 is not going to work. So I either need to cut and remodify this, which is probably what will happen, or find another stock, not stock, but aftermarket OEM style K-member, because the tubular ones are nice because they allow so much more room. And all the spherical stuff fits a lot nicer. So I'm not gonna put a stock K-member in this, but I'm gonna have to figure something out. So, all right, quick little update. I cut out my old motor mounts because I realized that those were my biggest problem. So I cut them out. There's no motor mounts in there right now on the body side of things. I shaved the bottom, let's see if you can see that, the bottom of the intake, but now the top is rubbing a little bit, so there's a lot of room. It's a lot of surface area I can take off, so I'm gonna trim that down a little bit with a sander as well. Get that all smooth and flush, because the motor needs to come this way about a 1/2 inch, because right now I'm rubbing on the line, which I don't want. But I mean, at this current point, oil filter would fit in the stock location, so I wouldn't need a relocation kit. Engine's sitting nice and low. It's not sitting up super high. I'm worried about making motor mount brackets as of right now, because not knowing where the transmission is gonna sit is really kind of hard. And I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna have to modify some things anyways, but I don't know. But yeah, it's in at the moment. That's where we're at. Intercooler piping. I will have to trim the corner of this weird bracket. That was an old Spog thing. So intercooler piping will go down, out through the front, back up under and to the throttle body. Yeah, I mean, that's all for today. It's gonna be a little bit before I'm back out here modifying, because now I gotta clean everything up, take the motor back out, clean everything up, take some measurements, and make some motor mount brackets. So this is gonna be interesting. See how it goes. Okay, small update on getting motor situated into the engine bay. Motor mounts are mocked up. This side is pretty much golden. This side, my plate is sitting kind of kittywampus like this. I'm just realizing that, so I have to, and that bottom plate on the engine mount side is pivotable, but I don't really like that. I want it to be as flat as possible. So I gotta cut, luckily they're just tack welded on. I gotta cut the one tack weld, take it, adjust it so that that plate goes from sitting like this to sitting more flat. It is a little concerning because when I mocked this all up, my oil filter was nowhere near that steering linkage, but then again, this being lined up will drop this side down a bit, so it might still clear that. I'm still waiting to find that out. Yeah, because when I had this mocked up, this was much closer to my brake booster and a bit closer to the firewall in general. So I'm thinking this whole thing is gonna have to slide back a little bit, but not the end of the world. But small update, still working at it, still trying to get it figured out. As soon as I do, I will do some little welding clips and then show this thing being bolted in. And then we can do radiator, intercooler, all that stuff. So that's a small update for right now, and I will get back to it. Okay, small update part 2. Totally scrapped what I had going before. My motor ended up sitting angled and not low enough. So talked to a couple people. I ended up taking it, getting it as flat as possible using one of these guys that kind of tells you if it's zeroed out flat with the K-member. So figured out the right angle and then put these little bean bags I had, or hand bean bags, whatever you call them, underneath to space the motor out, and then made my motor mounts around it at the right angle. So I have both sides tacked at the moment. I'm now gonna lift the motor out, clean up, and weld. I'll probably throw a couple tacks in, put the motor back in. I'll put the motor back in a couple times to make sure it's not like something got, you know, messed up or off before I completely weld them. But otherwise, yeah, they're pretty much gonna get completely welded. I might throw some like gussets or some bracing in there, but I mean, the metal's pretty thick, the welds will be strong. I'm not too concerned about it, but I don't want it to break. So, but otherwise, yes, motor is flat. Motor mounts are being made in the process. I also ended up taking the spacers out. I can always add them back in later, but that's where we're at right now. I'm gonna get the motor back out and check out these motor mounts. All right, so this is the mounts. It ain't perfect. Trust me, I know. I'm working on my fab skills, but it'll work. If I can get in here. So I'm gonna put another plate on this side to connect to his side. And then probably weld right down the middle, weld those in. This side, connected there. It's welded underneath. I'm gonna weld that crack, this crack, and all that in. So I'm gonna throw a couple tack welds, drop the motor back in, make sure it lines up without the bean bags in there, and then go from there. Okay, motor mounts are done. All I've got to do is wire wheel, sand them, spray them so they don't rust. But are they perfect? Goodness no. Are the welds not too shabby? Yeah, they're actually not too bad. But they're solid. I can't move it one bit. I don't even think I'm gonna add any gusseting to the bottom of them, just for room's sake. So yeah, they're done. I'm gonna get them cleaned up, get the motor back in. Yeah, I test fitted a couple times. It should sit right where I want to. I think I'll need to shim just a hair to keep the oil pan off of the steering rack, but I did shave that down a little bit, so we'll see how that clears it. But yeah, I'm gonna get the motor in and probably unhook the engine stand from that point. So, making good progress. Let's get this thing back in. All right, everything's a mess right now. I can't wait to clean up. Motor mounts are painted. I'm gonna let the paint dry for an hour or two, and then come out here and drop the motor in. So, we are one step nice and closer. We're gonna let this dry for a little bit. I don't really wanna be kicking a bunch of dust around, so I'm not gonna clean everything up and sweep right now, but I will be back out here shortly. All right, so to wrap this video up, motor mounts are all done. Everything clears the steering rack, everything's on. Motor mounts and body side motor mounts all line up on both sides. Motor is sitting level how it's supposed to. Everything clears how it's supposed to nicely now. So that is all done. My final, next big thing I want to try and figure out before I jump into putting radiator, intercooler, all that stuff on is my oil drain feed line. My oil drain line, not feed line. Because it's such a short distance between the block drain port and the drain port on the turbo, it makes it very tricky. I've ordered a bunch of, I've had a bunch of different fittings. None of them work how I really like them to. I've had a couple people say to try use shorty style fittings, but I really don't feel like buying a bunch more fittings, not knowing if they're gonna work. So, I don't know, we'll see. Otherwise, I'm just gonna use this, it's basically a heavy duty rubber hose with a barb style fitting. So this has a little bit more flex than the PTFE style line that I was using. Otherwise, I'm gonna try calling a couple places and see if I can get a custom 10AN hose made, a hard line or something. I just really want it to have some sort of movement, so we'll see. But that wraps up this video. Motor mounts are done, motor is in. We're making progress. So on to the next thing.